thing about public speaking, and that is you only make 2 or 3 points and you make them 4 or 5 times. And so I'm going to try to keep it to 2. Most of what I want to say is thank you, but I'm going to start with a question. We have people who have been in this orchestra for 40 years. Recognize those this afternoon. We have a larger number of people who have been here for 30 years. Now I have a question. Why in the world would anybody do that? Playing in an amateur orchestra, at least in the early days of rehearsal, is a frustrating experience. Come on, musicians, you know what I'm talking about. You've heard this piece on a recording, every note is perfect. You haven't pulled your instrument out for the last 4 months. See, they're getting it now. So you show up at the first rehearsal, and you don't sound anything like this image that you'd like to have. So it's frustrating, it's embarrassing, because you're thinking, I'm going to get up in front of people and sound like this. It also imbues guilt, because all of us as amateur musicians have other jobs. And we have bosses, that's not counting our wives and husbands. And we have children, and we squeeze in a few moments, a few hours of practice now and then. So we always show up. Raise your hand if this doesn't occur, if this doesn't happen to you. We always show up feeling guilty that we didn't practice it. So, for 40 years, we've been fearing embarrassment, feeling guilty, and realizing we're not ever going to sound like that perfect recording in the New York Philharmonic. So why do we do it? I can tell you we don't do it for money. If you think of this as a potential source of revenue, then I have some mental health professionals I'd like to talk to you about. As a younger man, I sometimes join groups, even musical groups, trying to have a date. I was a very shy person. And so I would join and look deeply into the eyes of the first flute player, hoping that something actually would be there. I never learned that I had to actually ask them out. I just waited until they came to me. And they most often didn't. So we don't do it for money, and I don't think any of us do it for finding companions. Most of us are a little past finding companion age. Somebody left. One other possibility, of course, is that we are performers, and maybe we just want to be out in front of people. The great English actor of a couple of generations ago, Laurence Olivier, was asked by, I think it was a Frost interview, I'm not sure, but he was asked why he put up with being an actor. It's such a difficult job. It's so sketchy in terms of employment. And there was a big pause. And he said, I want people to look at me. I thought that was very honest. nature films and you've looked at penguins, and I can't tell one penguin from another. And that's the reason we dress like we do. We don't want you looking at us, really. We dress like penguins because we want you to pay attention to the sound. Now, human beings are visual creatures, and so some people in the audience will come to Susan, come to Al, and complain about, I'm hesitant to say this word, but complain about cleavage. And I don't know if we were, we're a very beautiful and sexy group, but I didn't know it was, distracting to that point. So why is it, if you watch television dramas, the driving motives are money, sex, and fame. And we're not too big on any of those. So why do we do this? Well, I also remembered, as I was thinking about this, I remembered an interview with Itzhak Perlman. And Itzhak Perlman is arguably the greatest violinist of the past generation. And he now teaches a select group of students. And of course he gets hundreds, if not thousands, of applications, all of whom can play all the notes, technically extremely competent. So how does he choose who he selects? And he was being interviewed and he said, I used to look at the performances they've given and other issues like that. And he said, now I have a very simple question. He said, I want to know how they respond to sound. I want to know if they find sound moving. Folks, we show up with the Athens Symphony, and our audiences show up for a number of complex reasons, but one of the main reasons is that we respond to sound. We are that 5 to 20% of the population who, through nature or nurture or a combination thereof, have learned to respond emotionally and cognitively to this very abstract medium, ephemeral medium of sound. This brings me to all the thanks that we as musicians need to provide. We first have to thank our audiences, who are that other 5 to 20% of the American population who are willing to invest their time and their resources to come hear sounds. Some people go to poetry, some people go to football games, some people watch the NBA. People come to us because they respond emotionally to sound. Just today, in the choir, a person turned to me as I was moving up to sing in the choir and said, that violin passage in the Jupiter brought tears to my eyes. That's the response. That's exactly why we do it and why our audience shows up. We are very fortunate. We've gotten through those initial embarrassments and guilt of our early rehearsals. And we occasionally approximate the sound that we would like to produce. to have a venue that allows for that sound to be projected to the audience. We are in this town incredibly blessed with this venue. And for the musicians who know, the shell, having this very expensive, elaborate shell, makes all of the difference in the sound, our sound, and the sound we communicate. We have many people to thank, the whole community to thank, for that incredible venue. Everything costs money. Nobody in this organization, the musicians, the conductor, nobody except a few scholarship students, get paid a dime, and it still costs close to 6 figures to run this organization. And that only happens if you have community leaders who are willing to do that, and you have contributors who are willing to give, private contributors as well as businesses. So it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to have an organization like this. And we as musicians are incredibly, incredibly thankful to all of you. Now I would like to finish up by just giving a few private thank yous from me as someone who responds to sound. I'm going to mention a few individuals in the orchestra. This is a difficult task because so many people have created an emotional response for me. Barbara, our first horn player, has been one of the most consistent, the most reliable musicians in our group. She plays an incredibly difficult instrument, and she has put majesty into so many of our pieces. Barbara Hahn. Barbara, would you stand up? One of the people in this orchestra has broken my heart. The music has broken my heart. She didn't personally break my heart. Anna Abrantes, would you please stand up? When that woman gets it just right, and she gets it right very often, she has the most gorgeous cello sound. It just warms your heart. I was trying to pick out some folks in the woodwind section, but you know what? The whole woodwind section has the facility with which they carry off some really difficult stuff. It just amazes me, and with all of the woodwinds, please stand. I am particularly responsive to the English horn. And if it were me, I would schedule English horn in every piece. I love English horn. There are many other folks who have moved me, but I will now mention 2 other people for reasons of organization, and several other people for reasons of organization and leadership. I stumble over her name, but Serena, would you please stand? Bailey is our concert mistress, concert master. And she handles that job with such grace. It's a difficult job to be the sort of foreman between the conductor and the band, and she handles it with real grace, and we appreciate it. Speaking of grace, well, I have to, I'm going a little over my time, but I'm going to digress for just a second. When Al Legati knew that he was getting to the point that he needed to turn over the conductor's role, we wanted to form a committee, we wanted to do a community search, we had a bunch of things. Al was not a committee person. Al was a person who, and this is the personality of people who originate organizations. He was a person who knew what he wanted, knew what he was going to do, and did it whether there was a committee or not. So one day, he communicated to us that Susan was his choice. I was a little miffed. I love Susan, but I was a little miffed because we didn't have our committee and we didn't really know. And I actually wasn't too sure that Susan was the right choice. I have been wrong 2 or 3 times in my life. I have never been as wrong as this. Susan has taken this organization from its founder and turned it into a mature organization. A mature organization is one where there is delegation of responsibilities, there is long-term planning, there is a variety of other things, and Susan has done that incredibly well. She does it with such emotional involvement, such incredible, energetic commitment. She's always planning 3 years ahead. Anyway, and I have to say one other thing, and that is I tried to count the other night, and I think I have played under about 14 different conductors, including a couple of nationally known conductors. Every one of them, save one. The day the rehearsal before, the dress rehearsal or the rehearsal before that one, everybody's getting nervous because it's not together yet. And everyone except Susan has engaged in some kind of demeaning comments about, why haven't you practiced more? Why aren't you, don't you people know this tune by now? Whatever. And sometimes we deserve that, by the way. Susan has never once, not one time, been anything but helpful, supportive, and taken the position of the musicians. So Susan, I personally am eternally grateful. There are many other things we could say about the orchestra and thanks, but I want to personally say that this organization has been one of the most fulfilling that I have been involved in my life. It has allowed me to take what little bit of talent I had and express it, and I am eternally grateful to everybody in this room and to all my fellow musicians. Thank you very much.